Welcome to another Resources for Granges program, in which we try to provide information and stimulate thinking. I'm Walter Boomsma, your host and the Communications Director for the Maine State Grange. Our topic today is, how did they do it? And with me are several members of the Highland Lake Grange who've done some really interesting stuff over the last few months. Dave Gowen, who is the Master of Highland Lake, and Joann and Larry Levesque, who chair the Supper Committee. Joann is also the steward, and Larry is the overseer. So we really appreciate you guys being willing to do this and for being with us tonight. Just as background, it's been clear that Highland Lake Grange has continued to remain active in spite of the limitations we're all experiencing because of the pandemic. Before we talk about some of the specific things you've been doing, Dave, can you tell us a little bit about Highland Lake, about your Grange?
Sure, no, I certainly can. The Grange was founded in January of 1875, so we're coming up on 146 years this month. The Grange met for about 15 years in the second floor of a one-room schoolhouse in the neighborhood, and then they built their own hall in 1889, moved across the street, and it's the same hall that we're in today. And the Grange was originally the Westbrook Grange, but then another Grange opened in town in the 1930s, and we changed to Highland Lake Grange, which is the local water body to our Grange. We have 25 members currently, and our focus for the most part in the last few years, I think, has been supporting the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, supporting some other community organizations, AA group. We've done some work with the local American Legion post, assisting there with some cemetery flagging. And we also kind of see ourselves as a neighborhood, a neighborhood kind of building. We are a Grange, but there isn't much municipal, there's no municipal facilities in this part of town, this part of the city. So we've had candidate forums, we've had DOT meetings there, those kind of things. So we kind of look at ourselves as a resource to the neighborhood.
So here we were rolling along, and all of a sudden COVID-19 hits, and we probably don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it gets really kind of but what happened? I mean, I know for a lot of people we're still dealing with a lot of uncertainty. When this thing kind of broke open, and it's even debatable when that happened, what were some of the things that you started thinking as master or as a Grange? Well,
during the winter months, we meet the first Thursday of the month. So we had our regular meeting in January, regular meeting in February. We had our meeting in the first week of March. And frankly, COVID wasn't even discussed, if I recall. Like, this is early March. I mean, it came so fast. We had planned for our supper, which was only the next week. And frankly, and 3 or 4 days later, of course, it just exploded across the scene. And there were all kinds of things, obviously, we all know going on very rapidly. We did have a meeting in March, our in-person meeting. We had plans for a turkey supper, which perhaps we could talk about later. And then by April, we just canceled our in-person meeting. It's just, we didn't know what to do. So we didn't meet. We originally had 2 Grange meetings scheduled in April. We canceled both of them. We didn't meet at all. We do email. We have an email list. We do phone calls. So all the members knew kind of what was going on. Come May, we started meeting via Zoom, or either video or call-in from the members who don't have the computer access. And so we kind of held together through May, made a few little plans at that point. And then by the time we got to June, CDC had some good guidelines. We kind of felt comfortable. We started meeting again in person with social distancing, but not inviting any guests in. It was members only, small group under 10. So we were able to reestablish in-person meetings by June, and we continued that now. But like I said, we don't have guests coming on those kind of things. So that's kind of how we got through that, and that's where we are today.
Yeah, and you mentioned the turkey suppers, and that's one of the things. The whole theme of these programs is how did they do it, I love the story behind your turkey suppers, and Larry and Joann, you guys are the chair of that program, and I understand, and we were talking before we went on the air, so to speak, that this originally started as a bean supper, became a turkey supper, that you were serving sit-down meals, typically anywhere 80 to 100 people a month, or at a meal rather, and then bango, here comes COVID. And dramatic effect. So that's not going to work anymore. And at some point you recognize that. And I think what the way I would describe what you did is you pivoted. You said, well, we're not done. We're going to make something work here. And you're going to swing into this new strategy. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about? I mean, it's kind of cool, I guess, that you were able to do that.
Well, Governor Mills came forth in March and started putting restrictions in, and we realized we had our turkeys ready to cook, and our turkey dinner, we had advertised for it weeks ahead. So we decided to go through with it. And so we made as many precautions as possible. And we usually have a buffet line where people get what they want, but we didn't want them to get that close to handling it. So we gloved up and masked up, and we dished out the food as they were going through the line. And that seemed to work out. We had probably 80 customers. So the meal was a success and we got through it. And from that date on, we realized we weren't able to do another sit-down dinner like that. So I think Dave and Kathy and Joann and I all came with the same idea that we have meals to go. I think there was other restaurants and other places providing meals that you can pick up. So we did that in September, the second week in September. And the trick that we had to do is we had to make sure all of our food was ready to roll. And we had about 120 customers per the first hour. So there was a lot of food that went out through there, but the line did back up and we were concerned about that. But we got through that and we served 154 meals. So that was even better than what we almost twice what the March one was. So, and we learned quite a bit. We had a meeting after the supper and tried to find out what we did right and what we could do better. And we came up with some pretty good ideas. So about a month later, we had another drive-through supper and we reorganized things and we served 180, and most of that was in 1 hour. So we had a huge turnout, very successful, and we never really had more than 4 turkey dinners per year. But this last one, it was a challenge to have enough food ready. Yeah. We had some good people in the kitchen, keeping the stuff hot, bringing it out to the food line, and we spaced out the workers that were putting together these meals. We gave some distance between each food item, and we masked up. We had masks on, we had gloves on. So we really felt we had done everything we could do. And in my opinion is we turned out a pretty good product, and we did make we made enough money to get through the winter.
And the numbers speak for themselves. You almost doubled Really,
Right.
you almost doubled the number of people you were serving. And how did the pickup work? I know some Grange did this, and they actually had people handing them to people in cars. Did people like come into the hall or up to the hall to pick them up, or did you have runners taking them out? And just how did that work?
Dave, why don't you answer that? You were working outside.
Okay, so nobody got out of their car.
Okay.
We had a queue, a drive-in queue. We had a queue that was way too short the first supper, but we learned, and the second supper we had a long queue to get in off the road. So basically, they would drive in. I was gloved and masked, of course, and I would find out how many meals they wanted in that car, and then sell them the meal. We did do $10, so there was no change. We asked for them to bring exact change, and I sold them. I give them a ticket stub, and I collected their money. They moved ahead. The order went into the Grange where Larry and Joann and the inside crew. We used our dining room actually for the kitchen setup. We used the whole inside, and out came a bag with 4 meals in it, or 6 meals in it, or sometimes 10 at a car, which was quite challenging. And off they drove. By the second supper, I don't think anyone waited more than 5 minutes to get their meals.
Is your parking lot paved?
Yes.
See, you could have done it on roller skates. Kind of like in the old days. Now, and I know at some point you mentioned the Boy Scouts helped with this, and what kind of roles did they play?
Well, the Boy Scouts have always helped us out at the Grange. Even when we did the turkey, the bean suppers years ago and the turkey dinners, they've always waited on the customers, and it's been a good experience for them, and it's really helped the Grange out because we only have probably 10 active members to show up for the suppers. And so they were on board, and they're a lot more able to run these meals out to the cars. They've been a big help.
Yeah, that's funny. I can't resist because I love kids. We had a community service program. This is actually a couple of years ago. And the person getting the award was real popular with the school kids. He actually coached some of the teams. And the teams all showed up for the celebration. And that was really kind of awesome to have that many kids at the Grange Hall joining. But here's the funny part of that. After dinner, it was a girls' softball team. One of the girls came up to me and she said, because I know the kids from school, she said, "Mr. Boomsma," she said, "can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." She said, "Would it be okay if we did the dishes?" Oh no, you can't. I think getting kids involved is so great because they usually do have energy and they like to be part of something. Why not? Many hands make light work, as the saying goes. So Joann, what was your role in all this?
Well, I was in the kitchen and making sure that all the food got out and stayed hot. And I was kind of in charge of making sure that it ran better the second time than the first time, which it did. Yeah. And the kids, the scouts also, they do community service and they need hours. So that actually helps them in that role too. So I'm kind of the supervisor and the person who points at you and says, "Get to work."
Yeah, that's great. So if a Grange was considering doing something like this, any quick tips for them?
Oh, I would say basically they probably want to have a meal that people would want to go to and plenty of help, and looking into the different containers and stuff that they have to have. A lot of advertising, and if they really wanted to do something, we're more than willing to talk to them. And I won't come and do a supper for them, but I'd be happy to walk them through.
Hey, there's another idea. There's another idea. Just quickly, and kind of go off into the weeds here a little bit, but I had a conversation with a master of another Grange, and he raised this question, which I thought was really an interesting question, about are we competing with local restaurants when we put on suppers or do these kind of things? And I think it's a valid question, certainly, because local restaurants are struggling. And I do potentially see the opportunity. I mean, the businesses in our communities are part of our communities. And I often wonder if we couldn't do some more of this connecting and somehow kind of put together some kind of a supper program where we are supporting local restaurants and local restaurants are supporting the Grange and so on. I'm Walter Boomsma, Communications Director for the Maine State Grange, talking today with Dave Gowen and Joann and Larry Levesque from Highland Lake Grange in Westbrook, and we're learning how they did it. Grangers are tough, we know that, and Maine Grangers probably doubly so. I don't know how many outdoor events we're going to be having in the immediate future. Today we're having our first major snowstorm. But a few months ago, you guys in Highland Lake sponsored, I thought it was really an interesting program that I may not have the name quite right, but an outdoor local history night. Dave, how did that work?
Well, one of our members, named Ken Moody, he's not a professional historian, but he has a lot of knowledge about that area of Westbrook where the Grange has been for so long. It's affectionately known as the Duck Pond Corner before it became Highland Lake. And we actually did a program a few years ago inside the Grange and had a really nice turnout on kind of a history night. So last winter before COVID, we talked about having another history night sometime in the fall of 2020. And of course, COVID hit and we weren't quite sure, because, every month that goes by, you kept expecting it to get better, the curve to get flatter, and it never did. Yeah. So come around, I don't know, maybe June, it became obvious that if we wanted to do this in August, we were going to have to do this outside. There's no way we were going to be able to have this inside the building. So the Boy Scouts that not only help with the supper, but they have full use of our basement and have for 25 years. So it's a symbiotic relationship. They have their equipment there. They have their troop scout trail there. So we back the trailer out. We put sheets on the top. We have a projector that we projected his slideshow on. And Ken did a terrific show along with Mike Sanfey, another member who's a Westbrook Historical Society president, and did, I don't know, maybe an hour and 20-minute presentation with an intermission. Everyone brought their own lawn chairs. Everybody that came in had wore masks. We separated people on our side lawn. And we did sell some water and bottled water and some snacks and took donations if people felt so inclined. It was free though, and had a really nice, pleasant late August evening.
Sounds
about 40 people showed up,
wow,
along with about a dozen Grangers. So we had probably 50 to 60 people there, and the reviews were good.
That's great. I love it. And by the way, we have pictures of some of these events, which at the bottom of the video, there will be links for those of you that want to read the original story and take a look at some of those pictures. This business of Granges and historical societies seems to be coming, and maybe always has been, fairly common. I know I heard a story about one Grange Hall that was decorating their Grange Hall for Christmas, and the Historical Society building happens to be right next door to the Grange Hall, so they decorated that too. Just a great example of kind of that symbiotic, synergistic relationship that can exist between community organizations, probably more important than ever with the limitations that we've got because of the pandemic and so on. And it's kind of interesting because I think of Westbrook, I think most people would think of Westbrook and think of it as not so much a rural area. Dave, is that a good perception? I mean, Westbrook we think of as being Portland, so to speak. I don't know if that's a good thing to say, but has that impacted your programming, your membership, the fact that you're not the typical small town Grange?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're actually only about a 15-minute drive from Portland. We don't really have any active farmers any longer in our membership. We have a few of us, I guess, part-time amateurs, and that's been that way for quite some time. But, we kind of go towards, like I said, a focus on being a neighborhood resource. a focus on the scouts, and also just continuing on with kind of how we can help that way and support other organizations, as well as just bring people into the Grange experience as well. But it is a bit of a challenge relative to the Grange being agriculturally based. We did a few programs years ago with the university system, agricultural outreach program, co-op and stuff. We had some folks come in.
When I was looking for
the extension service, came in and did some programs on gardening a number of years ago.
Didn't you do one on bees? Or maybe
we did. We had a beekeeper come in a couple of years ago, local beekeeper. Yeah. That was part of. That was just at a. It wasn't an event like the history night. It was an add-on to our lectures program. But it's a great way to invite people into the Grange to see how it operates.
And I think it's kind of interesting. A couple of years ago, I was at the fair. We had a fair that year, and happened to be near the Grange booth, and ended up having a conversation with somebody who'd never heard of the Grange. And we got talking about the Grange values and the agricultural background and so on. And I said to him, you can't resist, right? I said to him, gee, it might be something you want to think about starting in your area. And he said, I live in the Bronx in New York City. I guess rooftop gardening, I don't know. But I do think there are different opportunities when we get into areas like that. So Joann, I got to come back to you because I'm a big fan of Celtic music. And you guys had a really cool, I wish I'd heard about it. I might have even tried to drive down and like crashed it. An Irish Christmas party. And I understand the idea for that came in part from the Maine State Grange Family Health and Hearing Contest. What was that all about? Can you tell us a little bit about how that party went?
Sure. You're supposed to pick something each month, and they're having a special thing for December. If you picked a country, you get extra points, and I like to go for the extra points. So we talked about it, and we picked Ireland, which is one of my favorites. So we brought in Irish flags and had Irish flags all around. We had a Christmas tree, and we brought in information about how Ireland celebrates Christmas. And I did a slideshow and played some Irish songs. So we learned all about the Ireland, and then we went along and had our own little gift swap. Unfortunately, we couldn't open it all up to the public because of the COVID.
Right.
So we had a really good time.
Sounds like it. And I saw pictures of some fantastic looking cookies.
Oh.
And I know from the report I got, I know that some of those cookies were distributed to community organizations. Apparently they didn't all get eaten.
Right. Well, we started that out because I was planning on making cookies for my mom who's in a nursing home. So I brought that idea to one of the Grange meetings and said that I was going to do that. And we have several members who are either in assisted living or in nursing homes. So we put it out to the members, and everybody who could made cookies and either dropped them off ahead of time or we brought them to the meeting. And we had enough to have our own while we were there. Plus we had 2 to nursing homes, 1 to assisted living, and we had extras. So we delivered another box to the fire station.
Oh, how cool is that?
Well, that's what we did with the cookies. It was a community service, and we didn't have to cook that night.
There you go. It's really great. And one of the things I love about the Grange is it's great when you can get a match, when we can have fun while we're helping our communities and helping other people. So, congratulations. It sounds like one of the things Highland Lake is good at is exactly that. You guys are having fun in spite of the challenges. So we're kind of running out of time here, but I have a final question. Obviously, a lot of Granges are really struggling right now because of the pandemic, and many Granges struggle through the winter to begin with, and now doubly so because there are so many things we can't do. So what would be one piece of advice or wisdom or something that you would offer to a struggling Grange or a Grange that wants to do something different, wants to pivot? How do they do that?
Do you want me to go first, David?
Sure, go ahead, Joann. Ladies first.
I think basically you have to make sure that you use all your resources, because all your members are different ages and some might want to come to the Grange, some might not. So offer the Zoom and the email, have people call in if they don't want to show up. Be willing to go and pick stuff up from them. Make sure they know what we're doing for community service so that they still feel part of stuff. So just make sure you use all your resources and try to keep everybody involved.
Good, yeah. Larry?
It's my job to agree with Joann. But I think also, you know, your membership, they all have ideas, and try to pull together what seems like a good plan and go for it. Because if you're just waiting for a perfect time to do something, that time might never come up. So, you know, make a plan, do what you can for preparation, and have a little fun with it. And that's all I can add.
Yeah, a good program today is a whole lot better than a perfect program that never happens. And I think sometimes we worry too much about getting it right, and we need to worry about getting it done. So Dave, drive it home.
I would say that the keep your public appearance good. You want to keep the hall in good shape, good signage on the hall, keep it, you know, cleaned up and presentable, a place that people are going to say, wow, that looks like a good place to go. And one thing I did mention over briefly is that our Grange for 60 years has done the agricultural displays at the fair in Cumberland County. And that's another way we keep ourselves in front of the public. And I think that's a critical thing to keeping the Grange, any Grange, viable. Look inviting.
Yeah, I have to kind of go off into the weeds again, because when you mentioned the fair, there was a couple of Granges actually, and this goes to that pivoting thing, who said, gee whiz, we can't do the display at the fair this year. Let's take all of the product that we would normally display at the fair and put it on a table out in front of the Grange Hall. And I think they called it a give and take thing, where people could stop by and take something from the table they needed, or potentially leave something there. I thought it was just another great idea of not giving up, of pivoting. And I know Grange Hall appearance is extremely important. When I drive around the state and see Grange Halls, it's always nice to see them looking really good. So, well, I really appreciate you guys being willing to share with us today. And I know in good Grange spirit that if a listener, watcher has any questions about any of the programs that you're doing, you'd be happy to help. All they have to do is use one of the links below. And I, as communications director, will help you guys get in touch with each other, and we can make that happen. Because truly, one of the great things about the Grange and being a fraternal organization is that we are here to help each other. Really appreciate everybody joining us, and hope our listeners found this helpful and encouraging. If you have ideas, listeners, for future topics, just send an email to webmaster@mainstategrange.org, or you can submit it through the website. We are here to help each other. Now, obviously, this hasn't been a Grange meeting, but it's probably still important as we end to remember, as there is no more work for us today, and we are again to separate, let us not forget the principles of our order. Let us add dignity to labor, and in our dealings with our fellow men, be honest, be just, and fear not. Let us be quiet, peaceful citizens, feeding the hungry, helping the fatherless and the widows, and keeping ourselves unspotted from the world. Isn't that great advice for the times that we are living in? A patron places faith in God, nurtures hope, dispenses charity, and is noted for fidelity.